Hi, welcome back to Illustrator. We're ready to get started on our second type tool lesson, the advanced type tool. So let's go to File, New, and let's save it at the same presets we did last time. So leave it at letter. So that should be 8.5 by 11 inches. Let's call this, and our name bar at the top, let's call it Advanced Type Tool and click OK. All right, let's grab our type tool and just a very quick review. Remember, you can change lots of options up here in your control bar up at the top. You can change and pick a color for your font. You can put a stroke on it if you want. You can change the stroke size. You can change the opacity. You can change the font. You can change the font style and the size. To begin with, I don't care what font you pick, but I do want you to pick a decent size. So let's go down to 72 and we're just going to click and we're going to type our word. Now, if the font that you pick doesn't have some thickness to it, I want you to change the font thickness. But again, I want you to pick a font that where there is at least some parts of the letters that are relatively thick. So stop the video and do that now. All right, so I want to start by showing you that you can fill this with more than just a solid color. We can fill it with a pattern. So we're going to click on the fill option up at the top, and we're going to click on the swatches library in the bottom left. You'll notice you have a bunch of different ones. I will tell you that you can pick from predetermined colors in here. The gradients one will not work. I'm going to show you how to apply a gradient differently later, but a pattern will work. So if you click on patterns, and I don't care which category you pick from, I'm going to go to nature. Let's go to animal skins, and I'm going to click. Sometimes you have to double click, but ooh, that's cool. I got a nice peacock pattern in there. I'm going to put a stroke. Sometimes when you are dealing with patterns in text, it makes the letters difficult to read. So putting a simple stroke on it sometimes will help. All right. From here, I'm actually going to make this just a little bit bigger because my font size is kind of small here. I want to be able to see this nice and big so we can see our pattern in there. All right, so we're going to open up a new panel in here. We're going to open up the character panel. So yours may or may not have the shortcut button up here. So you can see mine where it says an orange character. If this is not here, you can get to it by going to Window, Type, Character. So either way, I like the shortcut, but depending on how your software was downloaded on your laptop, you may or may not have it in there. All right, so once we're in character, it's going to show you the font name, the font name, and if it has a style on it. From here, just like up here in the control, you can change the size. You can also change what's called the tracking, where if you decrease it, see how my letters are getting spaced closer and closer together? I can do it to the point where they almost touch. I can change here. If you hover, it'll tell you the vertical scale, so I can stretch my letters out. You can also deal with, oops, what's called kerning. Now you'll see that I click that and this is telling me, nope, you can't kern. So what kerning is not just the equal spacing between letters, not just here, which is our tracking. Tracking is the spacing between letters. But what kerning does is because some certain fonts kind of look, you get weird gaps, especially if you have like W's and O's, you might get weird gaps, even though the letters themselves are spaced out equally, but because of the shape of the letter, you'll end up with a kind of a funky gap. So you can change the kerning. So you're spacing it out so some of those gaps will disappear. And again, that just depends on the font. My font, this one particular font can't be kerned. So in other words, all my spacing has to be consistent between letters. Kerning allows you, if you have severely angled letters, to fix that. Okay, so try that. Stop your video and see if it will let you kern or not, and you can kind of see the difference. If not, don't worry about it. Just know that if you've got some weird gaps between your letters, so like some of the spacing looks fine, and then the next one all of a sudden it's like, why does that look like it's a big gap, even though it's not there? Try kerning it. That will fix that. Okay, so that's in your character panel. So some basics in there. You can also reset this panel. So if you come in and you start typing and your letters are crazy because they're overlapping or whatever, if you hit reset, it's going to reset everything back to basics. Okay, including your font size is going to put it back to the default size. It's going to set it back to your default type. All right, so go ahead and try that now. So we've gone over tracking. We're now going to go over letting. So I want you to click to activate this type, and I want you to hit the enter key, and I want you to type one more word. Okay. I'm going to make my font size just a little bit smaller here so we can see things a little bit better, so that you now have 2 lines of type. Let's go ahead and open that character panel up one more time. And this time, I want you to hover until you see where it says set leading. It looks like leading, L-E-A-D-I-N-G, but that's called your leading. So what the leading is it's the spacing between lines of type. So if your tracking is the spacing between letters, your leading is the spacing between lines. And again, you can increase or decrease it to the point where they overlap. Okay, so that's if you have multiple lines of type. So go ahead and play with that. Let's go ahead and close the leading so that they are almost touching. And let's go ahead and go to File, Save for the first time. File, Save As. And we're going to save this in our Lessons folder, and we're going to call it Advanced Type Tool, and click Save. All right, we're ready to go on. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to move this up to the top. I'm going to grab my type tool, and I'm going to type yet another word or words. I'm going to change my font. This is just practice. Let's pick a different kind of font. Change your size if you need to. I'm not crazy about that font. Let's try something. I don't want a script font. Ooh, that's a cool one. I like that one. Okay. So we have another font here. And I'm going to show you how to make some selective changes in here and apply a gradient. So we are going to change this from a type to a shape object. So what this means is you cannot make any spelling or word changes to this from here on out. So you need to make sure that your spelling is good. You need to make sure that you're not going to want to change what the words say, because we're going to convert this to outline. So we're turning it into shapes rather than letters. There's 2 ways you can do that. You can either go to Object, I apologize, go to Type, Create Outlines. Okay, that's one way to do it. The other way to do it is if you click on it, you right click and you go to Create Outlines. Now it's not going to look like it does anything until we zoom in. Now if we zoom in, if you click on a letter, we're going to do this with our direct selection tool. You can click on individual anchor points. And I've got a crazy funky font here, so I've got all kinds of points in my letters that you probably don't have. So you can change those. You can ungroup all of this too. So I can right click and ungroup. Now I can even pull apart some of my letters because I've ungrouped them. They're all individual ones. Make that bigger, overlap that, change my color. So we're really getting crazy here now. I'm going to regroup these. So let's go ahead and stop the video now and try that. I want you to make some modifications to individual letters once you have created them as outlines. Stop the video, do that now. All right, now that you're back, I want you to regroup these. Now that we've got these grouped, we're going to apply a gradient. So if you click on it and you grab your gradient tool, first thing we're going to have to do is apply any gradient. It doesn't really matter. You can grab and go into the gradients panel and select a gradient that way. You can even use the gradient tool and create your own gradient by opening the gradient panel. but I want you to go ahead and apply a gradient. Have some fun with that. See what kind of control you can get with that. Notice you have all the same commands with the gradient. So if we're in that gradient panel, you can change your type to radial. You can change your colors. We can add and delete colors. So I'm kind of going through this fast. I want to see you apply a gradient to these outlines. All right, go to File, Save. All right, now we're ready to type on a path. So paths are just what it sounds like. If you were to go for a walk and you see a path, you follow along it, right? Well, type does the same thing. And you can type on a path that you create using a variety of different tools. The first one we're going to use is the pen tool. So the pen tool is in the drawer over here, and what it does is it creates points. So what I want you to do is we're going to create just a simple diagonal. We're going to click and click, and then we're going to close the path by double clicking on the pen tool. Okay. We're going to grab our type on path tool. We're going to come over to the path, and your cursor should change when you get close to that path. And it should show path, and you can click and you can type. Try that now. Try a simple diagonal path, type on path. Okay, we're going to try that again with the pen tool. This time we're going to do a zigzag. So we're going to click once, click twice, and click down. Now if you're like, whoa, what is going on there? Don't freak out. We're going to click because it just depends on what you have yours set at. I'm just going to flip mine here. So we have an angle. And even if yours is filled, actually, I'm going to go back. I'm going to do that so you can see. It doesn't matter if you filled your path or not. I've got a filled path here. I'm going to show you what happens when we do type on path. Grab my type on path tool. Notice that bounding box is going to stop. I'm going to click, type here. So a couple things with this. Notice that once I create this as a type on path, any color that was in that shape or path is going to disappear. Also, notice not all of my type fits, and I know this because I have a plus sign, so I have a couple options. Easiest thing to do is just decrease your size so that it fits. Okay, that's the easiest thing to do. You can also edit that path using your tool here, so I can elongate that. So I'm just using the direct selection tool. All right. I can also flip and change where this path starts and stops. So right now, if I click on it, you're going to get the starting point, the ending point of where that path is, and your middle point. So I can move this thing around, and it really depends on what my alignment is. So if you're like, what is she talking about alignment? So up here in the options, you'll see that right now I'm left aligned. If I click center align, it's going to center in the center of my path. If I right align, it's going to do it on the right. And again, so you can see you can move this type a little bit, right or to the left. I can shift those things. Okay, so that's two very basic paths. We're going to get a little bit more advanced. Take your pen tool. This time, instead of straight paths, we're going to do a curved path. So we're going to click and drag one point up. We're going to click and drag one point down until you get a curve. I don't really kind of care what kind of curve you have. And if you want to, you can even get funky and curve up again, right? Again, don't worry about what this color is. We're going to grab our type tool. I'm going to come over and I'm going to find my path. And I'm going to continue. And you'll notice that it's coming out from the center because right now I'm center aligned. I can still change my font. I can change my font type. I can do all this fun stuff that I always did before. I can grab my direct selection tool. I can change that path. All I'm doing is clicking on the points. You might have to double click, so you might have to zoom in to see what you're doing. I can change the slope of the curve. A lot of this takes just some monkeying around, guys. You got to get used to it. That's really the only thing there is to it, the best way to learn it. So I've got a diagonal one, got kind of a teepee looking one, and then I've got a curved one. All right, we're going to continue on. Besides using the pen tool, you can also use the shape tools as well. So I can drag an ellipse, I can grab my type tool, my type on path tool, and I can start, uh, start typing even more. See? So go ahead on the ellipse and I want you to type on a path. Okay. So here's where you have a little bit more options if you have it on a shape rather than an open path. We've got a closed in shape here. If we click on our direct selection, this is really tricky, guys, but if you find that middle point, you can actually flip the text inside the shape. You can move the starting and stopping point. So you can move it where it starts and stops around that. I can even change my shape still of my path. Okay. So go ahead and stop the video and try that now, either with the circle or the square. I don't care. All right, we're moving on again. Here we go. So now we're going to be talking about the area type tool. So remember when I said that clicking and dragging is no-no? Well, let's say for once you actually do want to have text flow in a certain area. So I know I have a paragraph of type and I want it to be this size. Well, if I click and drag, it has now created a text box margin. So before you do that, so I'm going to undo that for a second. I want you to open up another file. So we're going to go to File, Open. And in the Lessons folder, so you need to go to the Print Shop Lessons folder, there should be, sorry, excuse me, I have to go all the way back. Courses, Art, because I want to make sure I have the right file for you guys. Print Shop, Lessons. There should be a folder in here called Type Lesson. And I want you to open up where it says Copy Text, okay? And we're going to take the type tool and we are going to very carefully highlight and we're going to go up to edit, copy, and then we're going to close this thing. Okay, so we've copy type and you can copy type from anywhere, emails, websites, wherever. Now, if I take that same type tool and I click and drag and I decide how big, what my dimensions of my box is going to be. So if I want it long and thin and I go to edit, paste, it's going to flow that in that box. See how I've got a plus sign though? It tells me it did not fit in this box. That's the danger of clicking and dragging because you never know if it's going to fit all the way or not. So you have some options in here. I can resize it if I want, or I can resize my box by grabbing the selection tool and resizing that. And it's going to tell me if and when I finally have all of my text in there. Okay. I'm going to click and drag that out to the side for just a second. Okay. The type area tool is similar. So that's great. We can make sure that our type flows in here if it's just a basic square that we want to flow it in. But what happens if we want to flow it in a circle, not a square? Well, that's actually not too terribly hard to do. We need to come on up and we need to grab an ellipse tool. And we're going to click and drag. And again, it does not matter that this is filled. We're going to come back here. We're going to grab our area type tool. We're going to come into the center. You need to find where it says path. So have to let it hover on the edge and click. And then again, you can go to edit, paste, and it's going to paste that content that's in there. Okay, now a couple things while we're in here. Stop the video, do that now. Go ahead and paste it into your oval. All right, we can still make all the changes as we did before. We can still change our font type. You just got to click on it with your selection tool. I can still change my font type. I can make it really small, and that's what we're going to do. I want you to do it so you can at least see most of the type And we're now going to open up a new panel called the paragraph panel. And again, if you do not have the shortcut up here in orange that says paragraph, you can open it up by going to Window, Type, Paragraph. Okay, so the the paragraph panel really does not deal with anything with the letters. It has all to do with when you have a paragraph of type. So it deals with the spacing and the leading. Excuse me. So you can change your alignment. So right now, if this is clicked and activated, I can make it left aligned, I can center align it, I can right align it. I'm going to zoom in so you can see this just a little bit better, guys. Still having this is clicked. So that's my basic alignment. And we're used to that. We're used to left, right, and center. But what some of us might not be used to is something called justify. So justify means it's going to space it out so that you're going to have text that goes all the way from the left and all the way to the right. So we can justify, and the only difference in all of your justifies here is how it ends the ends of your sentences. Okay. Is it going to put the ends of the sentences to the left? Is it going to center everything to the right or to the left? So this is justify. Justify is kind of interesting because what it does is if I click off, you'll lose the whole shape sometimes. But if you click on that justify, kind of helps hold the shape a little bit better. It makes it really hard to read words, sometimes in paragraphs of type, but visually it can be really kind of interesting. All right. The last thing we're going to do is one of my favorite things to do, which are type effects. So we're going to grab onto that diagonal type and we're going to make some copies here. Let's go ahead and let's make 2 copies of the diagonal type that we created. And we're going to click on it and we're going to go up to effect. So this is where our type effects are. Now I want you to disregard the bottom section. Those are all Photoshop effects. Excuse me, it's at the end of the day and my throat is very dry from talking so much. We're going to focus on these effects here. And you can see it even says Illustrator effects. We're going to focus on the stylize ones this first time through. So there's some basic ones in here like drop shadow. You can change the color of your drop shadow. Now, if you're wondering, like, nothing is happening, you have to click the preview button. Now, note, when you get into these effects, it can slow your computer way down. So make sure before you do this step that you save. So if you haven't saved recently, stop this video and save now. Okay, so in drop shadow, you can increase or decrease the opacity, which just means how see-through that drop shadow is. Like I said, I can change the color. I can change the offsets, which mean X and Y offsets are the grid, so I can push it to the right or to the left. I can blur it more or less. It's totally up to you. And click OK. You can still apply another effect. So I can still, on the same one, I can go up to Effect. I'm going to go back to Stylize. But this time, I'm going to go to Scribble. So what this does is it puts the effect on the entire type, not just that drop shadow, but the whole text itself. So Scribble is kind of hard to get a good handle on. You really gotta tweak and play. This one is not great. This text I have, it's really getting crazy. You know what? I'm just going to click cancel because for me, Scribble is not working. But go ahead and try it. Or if you want to try one of the other effects, like say outer glow. And again, you can change your colors. So outer glow just does similar to a drop shadow, but just slightly different. And you can change your blurring, your opacity. And then on your second copy, so stop the video and do two effects, do 2 stylized effects on this first one, 2 of them. And then on your second copy over here, we're going to finish up today we're going to go to warp. So it's just what it sounds like. So if I click on, let's say arc, again, hit preview, it's going to warp your type into some basic configurations. Okay. The nice thing about this dialog box, even though I'm playing around with it, if I decide arc isn't what I want, I can click on the drop down menu and I'm like, oh no, maybe it's bulge that I want, or maybe it's fisheye that I want, or maybe it's flag. So go ahead and I want you to apply a warp, any of these warp options or the warp effects to this last type. And that's it. You're done. A lot. We learned a lot with the type tool. Hopefully, you remember some of it. You found something interesting that you're going to want to use on your quote poster. That's it. Make sure you save, make sure you turn this in, and let's have some fun making some posters.